Hello, and welcome to this Rider Safety Training 2020 for Velocious Cycling Adventure Camps. My name is Tim Cusick, I am the head coach, and I'm going to take you through this short video to prepare you to have a safe camp. The first thing we need to do is focus on preparing for a safe camp and understanding what your responsibilities are to safety. First off, cycling can be a dangerous sport, and each rider needs to take responsibility for their safety. Three key things we talk about. One, ride defensively. We've been taught this all our lives, whether we're on a bike or in a car. Just always be aware of your surroundings, including vehicles and pedestrians. Don't assume they see you. Oftentimes you get in a group and you start talking and you forget to maintain that awareness and that ability to ride defensively. Ride alert. Road hazards are part of cycling. Look, the reality is all our coaches know and have ridden the routes. We pre-ride the routes as best we can at every camp and make sure everything's safe. But you never know if there's been an accident or somebody's dropped some gravel in the road or sand or something like that. So just be aware and ride alert. And finally, ride within your capability. It is your responsibility to make good decisions, to ride within your capability. One of the things that can occur at camps is you come to a camp and you want to do great. So sometimes you ride a little too far over your head. Ride what you can ride. Also, in preparing for camp, think just about the mechanisms, right? So let's start with a bike check. Make sure you bring your bike to camp in excellent working order. We do have a mechanic. We can do upkeep and basic maintenance and support you. But if you need a deep repair or something like that, we're not capable of doing it. What we don't want is my handlebars break off in the middle of a ride because I didn't tighten the bolts or something like that. So just make sure you do a simple bike check and you're bringing a safe bike. Next, do a skills check. Make sure that you have the skills you think you have. Sometimes just spending a little time brushing up on those skills are important. How is your handling? How is your riding in a group? Can you stop efficiently? Those type of skills. And finally, I highly recommend everybody review our supplied route document. Each route document includes a link to the Ride with GPS online map. Look at the online map, look at the profile, look at the route, and be prepared to select routes that match your capability. Okay, what about once we get to camp? How do I stay safe? First off, we have a couple of ride requirements. One is you have to watch this safety video and e-sign the waiver. And the goal here is not to just be like, wow, we just want to pound safety into everybody's head, even though we do. But it's really important that all attendees understand our rules of safety so everybody's on the same page. So we do require everybody watch this video and sign the waiver. All riders must wear a helmet at all times. We do not allow earbuds or earphones in group rides. Our ride leaders will ask you to take them out and put them away. And finally, please follow all the directions of your ride leader at all times. When we break down our safety overview, I'm going to break it into two areas. One before you ride, and then second on the ride. So before you ride, step one is select the right ride. Each day, we're going to put out the next day's route, and in here you'll see mileage and climbing and a link directly to the route on Ride with GPS. You can review the specific route. This is a sign up for our Mallorca camp actually, but it should give you some good insight. When you get that email, make sure you click on the different routes and you're comfortable with that route profile. What kind of skills does it demand? Is it a lot of climbing and descending? Are you comfortable with that? Make sure the route fits your capability. Also, as another tip, as the week goes on, you're going to get more and more tired. Gauge your fatigue and step down. One of the things I see that can lead to problems is riders don't want to admit they're tired, so they just go for it. Accidents happen when you're tired. Gauge your own fatigue and select the ride. And make sure you're considering other riders. If you're just too tired and can't keep up, it really isn't fair to the other riders to wait for you. Before you ride, check your bike. This is a simple check before you go. When you check into our camps, one of our coaches will do a quick safety review of your bike and give you some insights on how to make sure it's safe. It is your responsibility to do a basic check every day. We'll be glad to help you fix anything you find, but just double check so that you know you have a safe bike, right? Is your tire pressure right? Are your tires good? Are there any cuts or tears or anything like that? Are your brakes and gears functioning? Try wiggling your stem, your seat post, your saddle. Is everything tight and kind of clamped down? If you see any issues or concerns, immediately report it to one of your ride guides. Check your helmet. Just make sure it fits right. Here's a great 2V1 kind of approach where it gives you some good insight how to get your helmet on your head correctly. I know this sounds funny for a lot of experienced cyclists, but I see a lot of people with their helmets too far back or too loose on their heads. Both of those could, if you have an accident, leave you open for an injury. So just make sure it's on correctly. And finally, be prepared. We have support in our rides and typically have a support vehicle everywhere except in our Mallorca camps. But you still want to make sure that you have a small tool bag of stuff. Somehow if you get separated out and you need to replace your own flat tire or something, you want to make sure you have the capability. As always, make sure you have your cell phone on it and emergency numbers are loaded. When you check into our camp, we have a little piece of paper that has all the emergency numbers. We want you to take pictures of it so it's on your phone. The rest of the tools, make sure you have. It's the same stuff you might take as a group ride. We'll change your flats for you. We'll support any on-the-road mechanicals. We just want to make sure you have stuff in case of an emergency and you're somehow separated from the group. Let's talk about your safety on the ride. The key thing I really stress when you come to camp to have an enjoyable and a safe camp is ride within yourself. A lot of times we get to a camp and we want to do something we're not really prepared to do. That's kind of cool when it's a little bit of a challenge, but if it really is something you just don't have the ability, just stay within your ability. Ride what you can ride. When on the road, please ride 1 to 2 abreast. In the first day or two of camp, our coaches get pretty diligent about this. Riding down sort of the middle of the road as a pack, as you see here in this image, is pretty dangerous. Our coaches, our ride guides will tell you one, single pace line or double pace line. They'll help you work through that process and we'll actually teach you how to be more and more comfortable in those. What we don't want to do is kind of spreading out across the road and riding more than 2 abreast. When we see more than 2 abreast, we're going to ask you to skinny it up. Another obvious one, we want you to ride as far to the right as possible, but as safely possible. So if we're riding single or double pace lines, move to the right. What often happens as we get tired and we fatigue through the week, you start drifting more and more to the yellow line, particularly on climbs and stuff like that. Just please stay as far right as it is safe. I don't want you riding in the grass or in the gravel shoulder, but stay as far right as it is safe. Finally, follow the local signage. We do camps all over the world, so you have different types of signs. We'll work on and we'll teach signage for each location when they're unique. But the reality is simply observe all the signs that are out there. It's super important that we do that. We'll have a system. Your ride guides will always be there to guide you through the process, but just know that, for your safety, following the local signs and understanding them are important. Finally, let's talk about handling challenges. So in selecting rides, there might be times you have selected something that you're not ready for. What should you do? So let's say you've selected this hard ride and has a descent on it that scares you. What do? The number one rule is stop and inform the ride leader. Meaning stop. Don't attempt to get to the bottom. We've seen people do this. They get a little over their head and then it just becomes some terrifying descent. Don't do that. Stop and inform the ride leader. If you can't tell the ride leader in time, simply stop and call the SAG car or pickup numbers that are on your emergency contact on your phone, which you'll take a picture of when you check in. Be crystal clear about this point. Do not continue unless you feel safe. Stop and let us know. If you never stop and let us know, we can't help you. We can't safely get you off that descent or safely get you out of that situation. It is your responsibility to tell us when you're in that mode, when you're challenged and just don't feel safe. Let's talk about what happens in case there is an emergency. In the United States, we supply, 911 emergency contact numbers with a bunch of numbers. This is a fake one, but you'll have a bunch of numbers on there, which will allow you to, you'll have this as a photo on your cell phone. If there's an emergency in place and you somehow are the only person with a rider, or you're the one in an emergency and there's no ride leader with you, dial 911 in the US. You have a picture of the emergency numbers, this on your phone. But if the ride leaders are there, just let them do their thing. All our ride leaders are trained in safety. There's a process what to do. If there is some type of an unfortunate accident, they will lead the scenario. There's a process they'll follow. Let them implement that process and lead the scenario. If we're out of the country, which right now we're only doing trips in Spain, 112 is the emergency in Spain. So if you're visiting our Mallorca or other Spanish camps, 112 is emergency. Again, you have a picture of the contact cards. I'm using the same example as you can see, but you'll have a local picture. Again, if there's an incident, let the ride leaders handle it. If they're there, they'll dial, maybe ask you to help and dial, but the reality is they're trained to handle the situation. Please let them handle it. In closing, I want to make sure everybody feels safe in our camps. If you have any questions in advance, ask us in the welcome reception. Tell us right in advance that I'm concerned about this safety, or I'm concerned about that safety. If you have a scenario where you're uncomfortable in a ride, as I stated, make sure you tell us right off the bat. We need to know when you're uncomfortable. And finally, at any time throughout camp, if you feel your safety is being compromised by a ride guide or another person on a ride, don't attempt to manage it yourself. Please bring that issue up to the ride leader or up to me. Usually at most camps, I am the head coach, so I lead the guide team. Bring it up to me. If you feel your safety is compromised in any way, it is your responsibility, whether it's Joe Ryder next to you or Jane Ryder next to you or your ride guide themselves. Please inform me immediately so we can work to make a safer camp. Thanks everybody. Look forward to seeing you at camp.